Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's live comments. Prime Minister Trudeau is just having a personal day off, but then the two things stand out. One was that G7 stands fractured and G7 meeting was a grand failure. Well, we have talked about that. I'm more interested in Canada itself, and I find myself immersed in an oily tale. The tale that started with Trudeau Sr., but possibly doesn't seem to be ending because the same tale is being repeated. We always say history teaches us nothing. People don't learn from history. Basically, history does teach. But the Bourbon kings were famous for not learning anything. And Trudeau's being a part of that royalty, possibly do not feel that they should learn. And this oily tale, which I am talking about, which has raised hackles in Alberta and abroad, is an example of nanny approach that both father and son have taken over the national energy program, but without any evident overarching policy. The last time a prime minister called Trudeau waded into an oil patch and the furious Albertans got angry, they slapped bumper stickers on their pickup trucks, declaring, "Let those eastern bastards freeze in the dark." This was a very angry, very passionate response to the infamous, useless energy program in the 70s. And while Pierre Trudeau meddled in Canada's oil market with price control and nationalization, apparently it was said that NEP, National Energy Policy Program, was to protect Canadians from high world of prices by imposing a double taxation scheme that would cut gas pump prices in some areas of Canada. But then they also agreed it will jack up the prices. Ottawa's rural liberals did not at that time care for the Western Canada because their votes were less in number, but not now. But the voters in the Western Canada started hating both the National Energy Program and the formulator of the program, Trudeau Father. And as a matter of fact, in 1980 election program, the strategist of Liberal Party, Keith Davey, had reported, and it was widely reported in media, "Screw the West, we will take the rest." Trudeau's NEP cost Alberta $100 billion at that time in 1980 and set exploration a century back. Petro-Canada was created as an instrument of economic nationalism, and it was hated, reviled, repulsed in Alberta, and Pierre Trudeau was called Trudeau rips off Canada. But people have not forgotten it. Among Westerns of some age, or the people who are interested in the history and economic history, like me, this NEP has been the cause of the same contempt as the talk of the carbon tax now by Justin Trudeau. It's very easy to criticize NEP in retrospect, but I would give credit to Pierre Trudeau that at least it was a coherent, multifaceted policy. It was likely to ensure energy independence, security of supply, lower oil prices for all Canadians. But it was designed at an improper time. It was designed in the wake of Arab oil price shocks of 70s. And it failed speculatively to foresee the deep recession of 1980. It was a flawed policy because it was not well thought out plan. Forced forward 4 decades more, from 1980s, 4 decades, 40 years more. And Justice Trudeau has done the same thing, same nanny state approach, typical of the socialist and the communist countries. But hero is, you don't forget it, Chinese dictator and Fidel Castro of Cuba. Now look at the comparison. The father had spent $4.5 billion. Sorry, the son has spent, Trudeau Jr., $4.5 billion to buy a 60-year-old obsolete leaky pipeline from US energy giant Kinder Morgan. It's a heaven-sent opportunity for the shareholders of kindergarten. They have struck pay dirt. Double bonanza. It's not just only a multi-billion-dollar bailout, but an escape from the dangerous business of trying to ram a new pipeline through land developed and defended by environmentalists as well as by indigenous people. And now, what is amazing is that Justin Trudeau is doing the same thing, which he always objects. Protect environment is his creed, but buying Kinder Morgan for $4.5 billion, as I said, 60-year-old leaking pipeline, just to give money to the American shareholders, against the wishes of the environmentalists, against the wishes of the indigenous people, doesn't appeal. As a matter of fact, no rational corporate player in North America has ever thought of buying it. People have been watching for 10 years. The still stalled Keystone pipeline. But they never wanted to buy Kinder Morgan pipeline, which has triple the capacity with nearly 1,000 kilometers of pipeline across mountains and rivers. So Trudeau has put Canadian taxpayer on the hook for another $7 billion, and some estimates are $12 billion to actually build the controversial project. So $12 billion for buying and building a project which is much less than its market value. Now, Canada has lost carbon-laden oil sands, and they sell at huge discount to the lighter crude oil, in part because the gritty bitumen is expensive to mine and difficult to transport. It can't be transported to China, not to India, not to Middle East, not to Europe. So getting the gooey stuff out of the sand is costly because lighter oils must be added to dilute it sufficiently so that it can flow through the pipeline or drain out of the railway tank car. In any event, we have seen that whenever the politicians want to justify what they are doing, especially meddling in the market, they always take help of the word national interest. And that is what Justin Trudeau seems to have done. But there is a bit of irony here. On one side, we see President Trump invoking national interest to justify slapping punitive tariffs on Canadian steel, possibly on Canadian cars. And on the other hand, Justin Trudeau is using the same justification to provide Alberta's marginal oil patch operators with a taxpayer-funded pipeline for higher prices for the bitumen. So one is doing for the country, the other is doing for some oilmen. Now let's leave aside the contention that the whole issue is whether Canada's national interest or not. Make it cheaper to mine oil sands, transport them, burn carbon-laden oil when greenhouse gas emissions are driving the global warming market. They are, according to Justin Trudeau and his cronies, they are threatening the world. I'm not saying it is their word. But still, to preserve that environmental polluting issue, they are spending $12 billion. Secondly, taxpayer financing is very useful and has been used for major infrastructure projects all the ways. Transcontinental railways, St. Lawrence Seaway here, major highways, airports, all have fostered long-term economic growth. All have created new jobs and have generally benefited society. So the taxpayers' money has to be used for that. There's no objection. But pipelines are not which are going to help all the nation. They are one-way, single commodity transportation modes that deliver economies of scale only to the producers. And in this case, oil sand producers. So how do you justify taxing a guy in Ontario to help an oil patch producer in Alberta? Now, Albertans themselves don't like it. Jason Kenney has been against it. Some cases are likely to be filed in the court of law against it. But the very fact that these are single commodity lines, helpful for one group, ensures that it's not of national interest. I do agree that many times pipelines have been reversed and converted from oil to natural gas, but that's not relevant here. You are not going to get natural gas from Qatar to North Alberta. No way. So, build Alberta's oil patch and outlet to the sea, and it will lower transportation costs, and it's much cheaper. As a matter of fact, if we build an outlet to the sea and lower the transportation cost, this would be much lower price than the Alberta bitumen recently costs. Just last week, I was reading on the internet that Western Canada Select was priced at $41 a barrel, which is $2 less than the benchmark West Texas oil. So here is the solution. But no, we use the name of national prosperity, national interest to defraud the taxpayer. Now imagine, either we can have an outlet to sea with a lower transportation cost, or there's another way out, which will spur further development of the oil sands, a funnel to Vancouver, and then a fleet of tankers might make the oil sands much more attractive to China, to India, Indonesia, Korea, Japan, the major producers, users of this. So we just build a tunnel, big tunnel to Vancouver, and the cost of that would be 1/8 of the cost of the proposed buyout of a 60-year-old leaking pipeline. We seem to have forgotten that we are behind, much behind, the international mining of the oil. And a new pipeline in Pacific will take years to complete. Let's not forget, our neighbor to the south is full of light, clean shale oil and has become a net exporter. 2 years back, I had written that Quebec should start shale oil. Quebec has a lot of shale oil. Nobody bothered. They thought the expenses are too high. At the same time, somebody in Obama cabinet read my note and they started building the shale oil. And today they are the net exporters. To the long-term prospects for carbon-based fuels are dimming. So we cannot use in 20th and 21st century what was supreme in the 19th century. I think Justin Trudeau's notion of national interest is just a show me exercise of forcing through a fund and a project, fund a project because it has been given the regulatory approval. And as a matter of fact, would you believe the seller now is saying that we are developing coal field because of the increased cost. In spite of getting about $12 billion, they are thinking that it will be much more difficult to build this pipeline, replace it, remedy it, modify it for the safety guards at this cost. So we are one country in the world with a federal government that is there to ensure national interest. This is what Mr. Trudeau says. And I agree. The government should protect the national interest. And if need is, they should write roughshod over opposition of the project. But if it's there. Until now, Justin Trudeau has been able to claim that Canada can deliver on ambitious carbon cutting goals while expanding oil sands. This is a dilatory talk. And talk is easy, but it's not a reality. No country in the world would ever find $173 billion of oil in the ground and leave it there. Agreed. But betting that the taxpayers billions, 12 billions, so that he can get the law to the market before other cheaper energy sources make these resources uneconomic. You see, there is a leading organization in the world called 350org. And the guy has been, who found that organization, is quite a vocal one. And the moment Trudeau came up with this scheme, he said that Trudeau is a stunning hypocrite when it comes to climate change. He talks about it, doesn't do it. You see, when President Obama was faced with the same situation about Keystone, he knew that he could not defend the purchase of that or building that. So he rejected that big piece of infrastructure on global warming ground. And Trudeau, following Obama, is using the same ground to buy this pipeline. Well, the oily tail is getting too messy for him. And this contradictory approach between what he says and what he does is going to affect Canada as a whole. What we need is a very comprehensive and a technological economic assessment before going on this harebrained project. Or would the son repeat the folly of the father, which he is committed to do? Let's hope not. Bible says sins of the fathers visit the children. But the stupidities of the fathers should not be repeated by the sons. Thank you.